Smackdown starts off with AJ Styles making his return. He cuts he was cutting a promo. He was mentioning, the things he'd done in the past, mentioning how he's just trying to move forward and he's happy to return. Then Carmelo Hayes ends up coming out. He ends up, making a couple insults, taking a couple jabs at AJ Styles. Then he starts mentioning LA Knight and how he deserves to be US champion. AJ Styles interrupts and ends up mentioning, his feud with LA Knight, talk about, how good LA Knight is, mentioning his Mania match. Melo responds and ends up saying that he doesn't take advice from guys who are quitters. AJ then responds, ends up mentioning that if Carmelo was the guy that he says he is, if he really is him, then he would have already been US champ. Melo then responds back, ends up saying that if you were so phenomenal, you would be WWE champion right now. AJ Styles then ends up suggesting that they have a match. Melo ends up declining the match. Then LA Knight ends up coming out. He ends up getting on the microphone, ends up saying that, look, if he could beat AJ Styles, if Carmelo could beat AJ Styles, he will be next in line for the US Championship, which ends up declaring the match, which ends up leading into AJ Styles versus Carmelo Hayes. They was putting on a really good match. They was putting on a really good match, but they end up playing an injury angle with AJ Styles. I'm assuming it's an injury angle due to how they set it up, but AJ Styles ends up getting injured in the match, which ends up which caused the match to end, which allowed Carmelo Hayes to pick up the victory. After the match, after Melo is celebrating, LA Knight ends up coming in the ring, hitting a BFT, and that's the end of that segment. I love this, bro. I love this. I really enjoy what they did here. I love that they really giving Carmelo Hayes opportunities to face these legends, face Randy Orton, beat Randy Orton. He didn't beat Randy Orton, but he faced Cody Rhodes on his first match on SmackDown. Faced AJ Styles. He was the one to pin Randy Orton to be able to qualify in the Money in the Bank. They're really pushing Carmelo Hayes, and I can't wait. Now, we all know he's going to lose to LA Knight, but we know eventually he probably will beat LA Knight. That's who I'm assuming is going to beat LA Knight for the US Championship, because it is too soon for LA Knight to lose. But they're really doing a good job pushing LA Knight, and I'm excited to see what's in the future for him, because this is amazing. I love they're putting him against all of these top tier talent, all these Hall of Famers, man, because this is great. I really love what they're doing with Carmelo Hayes. Now we end up getting Michin versus Chelsea Green in a dumpster match. This was arguably my favorite thing in the entire show. The main event was great, but due to the finish, that kind of probably why I go towards this match. But this match was really, really great. This was very chaotic, fast paced, just reckless. This is what Raw is missing: storylines and matches that is just wild, chaotic. This is what Raw is missing. This is what Raw is missing. Outside of Rhea and Liv Morgan, they have nothing that's chaotic and wild. This is what Raw is missing. They're missing things like this. The story itself isn't all that in terms of this match. This match story isn't, the greatest or anything, but they make up for it with, how goofy and wild and reckless this match ended up being. Same thing what they did with the Braun Strowman and Braun Reed. The feud itself, in terms of their issues, isn't all that deep, but they make up for it with their matches being wild and chaotic. This is what Raw needs on the other side of the women's division. But this was amazing. Towards the end of the match, Michin ends up, setting up a table in between the dumpster, and she ends up hitting a power bomb through the table into the dumpster on Chelsea Green, and ends up putting her in the dumpster, picking up the victory. This is great. I can't wait to see what's next for Michin. I don't know who else she can face on the roster that is a heel. Like, they have talent, but they don't use that talent. Like, they have Blair Davenport, they're not using. They have Indy Hartwell, who was a heel, they're not using. They have Candice LeRae, who's a heel, not using. So I don't know who else she would face, because I don't know what other feuds she can have, because she can't face Tiffany. She can't face Naomi, Bayley, unless Naomi's about to turn that bad blood, but she's going to be busy with Bayley. So I don't know what's next for Chelsea Green and them, or Michin, but overall, this was a really good match, really fun match. Now we end up getting Bayley and Nia Jax and Tiffany Stratton. They end up cutting a promo. Bayley ends up saying that Nia Jax doesn't understand the importance of the WWE Women's Championship. She mentions the legends that won the championship before her and what it represents. Then she ends up mentioning that there's only two people that can actually beat Nia for her championship, which is herself and then Tiffany Stratton. Then she starts mentioning how Tiffany is going to eventually cash in on her after, being tired of being disrespected, and how Tiffany will be the one that will turn on you, and that that Bayley and Tiffany is the only two people that can really defeat her. Tiffany gets offended because she ends up saying that she doesn't need a briefcase to beat Nia. She could beat Nia on her own. But then Nia ends up interrupting because, of course, Nia takes offense to that, assuming that Tiffany, thinks she's better than, Nia, of course. Then Bailey, no, before that, before Bailey gets back on the microphone, Tiffany ends up getting back on track, ends up mentioning how Bailey is just trying to put them two against each other. And then she ends up saying that Bailey should bow down to Nia Jax since she's the queen. Bailey ends up responding. She ends up saying that she has no respect for Tiffany. She says that at least with Nia, she doesn't respect her character, but at least she can acknowledge that she's dominant. While on the other hand, Tiffany is the opposite. She says that she would rather bow down to a queen than to patronize a stupid bitch, which that was a great line from Bailey. This segment was great. They tried to attack Bailey, but then Bailey ends up being able to overpower both of them. Nia Jax is on the ground. Bailey leaves the ring, and it's just Tiffany Stratton, and she has a briefcase. Everyone is telling her to cash in, cash in, cash in. It looks like she's about to do it, but she ends up not doing it. Then, so they're, of course, they're continuing to tease to cash in, of course, teasing that they may end up doing it at Bad Blood. I don't think they will do it at Bad Blood, but it would be interesting. I think they're going to do the same thing what they did at SummerSlam, where SummerSlam, where she comes out, teases it, but then Naomi or someone will end up attacking her, which allowed Nia Jax to pick up the victory. After the match, though, Nia basically ends up threatening Tiffany Stratton again and actually asks her where her loyalty lies, and ends up telling her that she needs to focus on Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley because that's a title that you can actually win. Tiffany, of course, ends up pledge her her loyalty towards Nia, but they're slowly teasing Tiffany, slowly turning and slowly getting tired of Nia Jax. So it'll be interesting to see what they do at Bad Blood. Now we end up getting Tiffany versus Naomi. This was also a really good match. I really enjoyed this match. Towards the end of the match, though, Naomi ends up getting a roll-up pin, picking up the victory. I was a little shocked, but not really once I realized the goal here. This kind of confirms that Naomi is turning heel very soon. The fact that they gave her this victory, because you got to build her up strong for whenever she does face Bailey, which is my prediction. So whenever they do have that feud, you need to have Naomi booked strong. So it makes sense for her to pick up this victory. Now we end up getting the main event. The Bloodline versus DIY versus the Street Profits. This was a bang. This was an amazing match. This was everything you want a ladder match to be. Wild, chaotic, fast-paced, reckless. This is everything you want a ladder match to be. This was great. This was amazing. Towards the end of the match, we get to a moment where both tag teams, DIY and Street Profits, double team the Bloodline. They end up putting, I think, Tama Tonga or Tongaloa through an announce table, and then they end up putting another one of the Tonga brothers through a ladder, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. They basically end up taking out the Bloodline, but then it gets to a moment where both tag teams are on a ladder. They're both fighting to reach to the top. Then the Tongas end up coming back, and there's two ladders set up in the corner, and are set up perfectly in the middle of the middle ladder, so that way they can end up doing a slam onto the ladder. The Tonga brothers ends up both slamming both DIY. I think it was DIY or the Street Profits. I can't remember which tag team, but they end up attacking one of them off the ladder, end up slamming it into the ladders into the corner, which allowed them to end up picking up the victory, retain the WWE tag team titles. This was a great match. This was amazing. I was rooting for the Street Profits, but I knew the Bloodline was going to win. Very shocked there was no interference. They won this match clean, but to be fair, they didn't need an interference because it is a ladder match. So this was a good way to protect them. But overall, this was a really good episode of SmackDown. From top to bottom, this was a really good episode of SmackDown. Very entertaining from top to bottom. Yeah, but I'm very excited for Bad Blood. You guys let me know your opinions down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. But yeah, that's it.